All right, everyone, the persecution continues. Enrique Tarrio has been given 22 years in prison now. They had an enhancement on his charge of terrorism, despite the fact that he wasn't actually there at the Capitol on J6. He was in a hotel room, actually. He had already been arrested before, and what the prosecution mind-numbingly decided to say is, well, he planned his arrest specifically to whip his followers up into a frenzy, knowing full well that they would go and break shit up, and it was all foreordained that all of this was going to happen. It was very carefully planned, and he wanted to take over the U.S. government, basically. That's not really what it was. J6 was effectively a protest march that got out of hand and turned into a riot. The number of people that were there that actually had any organized intent is relatively limited. Nonetheless, Biggs and Tarrio and a few others, because, again, simply because of the fact that they had leadership capabilities or having the book thrown at them. Meanwhile, and you've got people that literally the only crime that they're guilty of is trespass, and not even destruction of property or simple assault or anything, still rotting in jail cells awaiting trial on minor charges. The reason why they dragged it out so long is, in my opinion, because, they're clearly violating the right to a speedy trial in most of these defendants' cases, even for Tarrio and some of these others. We're talking, they wait for several years to actually go through with the trial. The reason is because if they had shot their shot a year and a half ago, by now it would have effectively disappeared from the news cycle. Also, some of those people in on lesser charges would already be free. Some of them at this point get time served, potentially, and they would start telling their stories about prison conditions, about mistreatment, etc., and that wouldn't look good for the Uniparty. You can expect that to happen years from now, after the general election, of course, has already culminated. It probably ends with Trump pardoning all of these people, assuming that he wins re-election, by the way. You're not going to get that if Biden is re-elected, clearly. And so effectively a vote for Biden is a vote to deprive over 1,000 people of their basic due process rights. I'm just saying that is a little bit of a pitch there. The persecution continues. It's not really prosecution, because everything is being done deliberately in a very scripted manner. You've got a foregone conclusion about the guilty verdicts. You're basically just kicking the can down the road. So the ones that you're going to give 10, 15 years to, you can go ahead and throw them in the jail cell now. You can go ahead and have their trial now, because it's perfectly fine. They want it to be a little bit of a circus, basically. They want this on full public display so that the public, number one, they want Trump fans and MAGA fans in general, even those that don't support Trump anymore, to be afraid of the system, to see what it's capable of, to try to demoralize them. They want to whip the liberals up into a frenzy. They're doing this, close to the beginning of the primary votes, when the debates and shit have already begun, for a reason. But you don't want to have any of the lower-end defendants going through now. You have to wait a little bit longer, because the chance is some of them, basically, you put them on trial, they're found guilty, but the sentence is so low that they've already served 2 years in solitary confinement mainly. They're out, basically, they get time served. Or they end up with probation or community service or something like that. Enrique Tarrio, it's very funny. Because supposedly he's the leader of a very racist white supremacist group, by the way, too. Only he's a fairly dark-skinned Cuban immigrant, actually. Yes, it's just like the Ku Klux Klan has clearly relaxed its guidelines, because I keep hearing about black people joining them now as well. Oh, Jews in the Ku Klux Klan, yeah, it's fine. We're diverse and inclusive now. Maybe the Klan will be getting ESG investment from the Biden administration. It keeps happening over and over. The claims that are made in the criminal proceedings by the legacy media about these individuals are self-evidently false in many of these cases. Now, did Tarrio involve himself with rudimentary planning to stage, a riot? Of course he did. The idea, though, that they were going to overthrow the government magically, that they were the foot soldiers that were going to occupy the D.C. Mall while Donald Trump used legal maneuvers to seize the election and become the first American emperor or something like that, is a mythology that's been concocted by people with severe TDS who see someone with a MAGA hat on and they assume this is a high school dropout rube with violent tendencies, illiterate, usually on meth, skinhead basically, highly racist, incapable of differentiating reality from unreality, solely dedicated to their God Emperor Donald Trump. But it's a mythology. We know that it's a mythology. Even polling can show us that that's a mythology. If Donald Trump is capable of having half of the Republicans wanting to vote for someone else, it doesn't sound like a cult now, does it? It sounds like a rudimentary politician with core support that happens to be abnormally high because of his personality. You see this all the time. Sington there on Twitter, he loves to post videos and clips of Trump rallies, like, people marching for him and parades and shit, and declaring it to be cult behavior. Now, the reason why you're declaring it that way is because no similar thing is manifesting for Joe Biden, because nobody gives a damn about the dude. Yeah, Joe Biden definitely doesn't have a cult of personality. He has DNC paid shills that support him on Twitter, and that's basically all he's got at this point. Yes, the J6 defendants are being effectively tortured at this moment in blatant violation of their right to a speedy and fair trial. You have effectively a kangaroo court system going on here. This particular case makes even less sense than some of the others, like that old lady that got nailed with, I think they sent her to jail, and all she did was take a selfie. You touched Nancy Pelosi's lectern, naughty, naughty, how dare you do so? 5 years in prison and shit like that, like the QAnon shaman and stuff like that. It's a farce. The problem is that the system knows that they can generally get away with this because half the population actually believes it due to the carefully crafted, constructed propaganda that they've spent the last few years curating. They've been doing this for more than half a decade now. At some point, people get malaise, they get a little bit mind-numbed to it, and they just sort of bend over and passively accept the way things are. They're hoping to continue that propagandistic pressure, by the way, through the election, again in the potentially vain hope that they can stop populism from coming back into the White House. They're already laying the groundwork. By the way, the Dems and the uniparty GOP effectively have their wish. They've got a messy, prolonged primary. It doesn't need to exist at all. The writing is on the wall about who the Republican nominee is going to be unless he dies of a heart attack tomorrow or something like that, or the CIA manages to JFK him like they did to JFK and his brother. Yes, RFK Jr., you are correct on that one. We'll give you credit for credit is due. Thank you for standing up for the inconvenient reality that the U.S. government does assassinate its own citizens when it finds it impossible to do otherwise for convenience's sake. It's persecution. It's all dovetailed together. It's all complete shenanigans. They're hoping that you'll get demoralized. You won't bother to go ballot harvest or knock on doors or something like that. They're hoping that you'll get demoralized. They're trying to make an example of these people to make you afraid and sad, basically. That's about all. Peace out.